My parents refused to pay my college tuition, calling me a useless nerd. Later they begged for help, but my next move left them completely shattered. I'm a 27-year-old male who started my own business with the help of a couple of my college buddies a year ago. We've been doing great financially and are profitable right now. A few days ago, my estranged parents, both 54, who hadn't spoken to me since graduation, finally contacted me. They asked if I'd be willing to let them come on board as partners since they wanted to invest in my business, but I said no. I didn't discuss it with my friends, as everyone knew about my terrible relationship with my parents, and I didn't want them involved in my business at any cost. My parents have always neglected me and mocked me as a kid growing up, which was strange because I was the kind of child most parents would be proud of. They're both pretty well off. My dad is a dental surgeon, and my mother is the CEO of a firm. I grew up in a high-achieving household, and naturally, I was very ambitious from a young age. But I don't know why my parents were never proud of me and would make fun of me for being too nerdy. They were rich but barely contributed to my basic needs, purely out of spite. I had no idea why they hated me so much until I realized, indirectly, they blamed me for not being able to reach the kind of success they'd hoped for. They were pretty successful, but they weren't famous like they'd hoped to be. I found out about this while ranting to my aunt, my dad's youngest sister, now 46, the only person who understood me when I was 16. She told me the truth behind their unreasonable behavior and hatred for me since she thought I was old enough to know. They blamed me because they'd had to put time and money into raising me, and they believed that had they invested the same amount of time, money, and hard work in their jobs rather than me, they would have been in a much better place in their respective professions. They had me because of pressure from their families and didn't even want a kid. But now that they were stuck with me, they had to deal with me somehow, and their choice of dealing with me was to bully me and make me feel bad constantly. I'd say I was deprived of a lot of things as a kid. Even though everything was paid for, I never had any help from my parents, not with small things like homework or projects, and definitely not with bigger things like fights at school. If I asked for anything I didn't absolutely need, they'd just turn me away or, worse, make fun of me. They'd mock my appearance, which was easy since I was pretty scrawny and nerdy looking, and if not that, they'd make fun of my affinity for computers and tell me I'd grow up to be an IT guy and nothing else. They said investing in me was a waste of money. I was seriously emotionally neglected, and on top of that, these were the kinds of insults I was used to growing up. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it and instead believed there must be something wrong with me, which is why my parents didn't love me the way others love their kids. It was pretty messed up, but for me, it was normal. In my teenage years, I started rebelling against it a little, but my dad shut it down pretty quickly and threatened to have me thrown to the streets if I didn't behave myself. So instead, I resorted to talking about them to my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report them. But I kept saying no because I was scared of what would happen next. My aunt wouldn't be able to adopt me, and I didn't want to be a burden on anyone, so I chose to suffer at my parents' house. Whenever things would get rough, I'd speak to my aunt and feel better. Then, when I found out the reason behind my parents' behavior, I decided I was going to disappear from their lives after I was done with college. Since they didn't want me, they'd sent me to public school. I'm sorry if I sound arrogant, but I think it was a waste of my potential. Anyway, that should have been enough of a hint for me to know they didn't give a damn about my education or even me in general. But I still had some expectations from them, which all went to hell when they told me that after high school ended and I turned 18, I wouldn't have a place in their home anymore until I made something of myself. Additionally, they wouldn't pay for my college tuition either. I finally snapped and told them they couldn't do this to me because I knew I had a bright future. I'd been a straight A student all my life, and if they kicked me out at this stage of my life, right before I was about to start college, they'd be jeopardizing my future. They were adamant and told me, "You don't even have much of a future that we can jeopardize, so quit thinking so highly of yourself." Then they told me I shouldn't hold out much hope for a bright future because my teachers and friends had all wrongly led me to believe I was some genius and that some lowly IT guy who fixes computers for dummies in corporate offices is probably the highest position I'd ever be able to get. Honestly, it was a pretty ridiculous thing to say because even these allegedly lowly IT guys are pretty well versed in their own way and are equally deserving of respect. But my ignorant, disgusting parents would never understand that. I tried to argue my way into making them pay for my tuition at least. I'd worry about my accommodation later, but they didn't budge. So I ran away from home a few weeks before my 18th birthday and showed up at my aunt's house. I applied to a lot of colleges with scholarships while my aunt still continued trying to persuade my parents, but with no luck. Finally, we decided I'd attend college wherever I had the highest percentage of my tuition waived. Luckily, I got into a college with a 90% scholarship, and it had a decent computer science program as well, so I was satisfied with it. My aunt decided to pay for whatever amount I needed. She's in sales and didn't earn as much as my parents back then. She was pretty middle class, but she's still a hero, and it helped that my tuition was pretty low since I was a scholarship student. I'd only come back home if it was absolutely necessary for me, and otherwise, I'd stay in my dorm because my aunt would often travel for work. That's how I planned on going through with college, and my life improved once I was out of my parents' house. I was no longer worried or anxious all the time, so I felt a lot happier and was able to make friends a lot easier than I used to. That's how I met my current friends and business partners, who agreed to set up our own IT firm, and we're doing relatively well now. I thought my parents wouldn't care what I was up to since they'd never cared back when I was in school. But when they learned I was graduating college and was valedictorian, they decided to attend the ceremony. They couldn't enter since I didn't buy them tickets, and neither did I invite them, as we were not on speaking terms. We met after the ceremony was over, and I was very shocked to see them standing with my aunt, who looked just as annoyed as me since she'd probably had to deal with them. After the graduation ceremony, I had plans to go out drinking with my friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in my parents' hotel room fighting and arguing with them. They were mad that they hadn't been invited to the graduation, but my aunt had, and they wanted an explanation, which was funny because, hello, they didn't let me live with them, kicked me to the streets at 18, and then told me they wouldn't pay for my tuition even when they could afford to. That, plus all the mistreatment and emotional issues they'd caused me throughout my childhood and well into my adulthood. I didn't think they deserved an explanation, but I didn't want them to throw a tantrum outside my college campus, so I accompanied them to the hotel. Before losing my temper at them, I told them I didn't want to see them ever again, and if they tried to contact me, I'd make sure I got a protective order or something against them. Then I left the hotel to go meet my friends. I wasn't going to let them ruin a happy day for me. After that, I didn't speak to them. I heard from my aunt later that they were disappointed and angry, but they laughed and were discussing the idea of disinheriting me, which made no difference because I didn't expect them to leave anything to me either. So that was it. It's been almost 7 years since that happened, and we haven't spoken since then. A couple of days ago, they called me out of the blue. They'd asked my aunt for my phone number, and she'd given it to them because they told her they wanted to apologize. She told me she'd wanted to alert me about it, but she'd forgotten, and I get it, she's busy nowadays, so it's fine. But they didn't apologize for anything and went straight to the business proposition because now investing in me is profitable to them, as compared to all those years ago. I obviously declined, hung up, and then blocked them. I told my friends about it as well, but they didn't mind me declining without consulting with them first because they knew about my personal history with my parents. I didn't know what else to expect afterward, but the very next day, they hit back by tagging me and all my buddies in a scathing Facebook post. They were talking about how I was not the self-made computer whiz that I made myself out to be but just a guy with daddy's money who had succeeded in creating a moderately successful business, all because of his parents. But now I was refusing to acknowledge the help they'd given me all through these years. I was dumbstruck at the post, and I almost called them up to tell them off. But before any of that, I decided to get back at them with something I'd kept to myself for years. I had a couple of old videos of them from when I was a teenager and still lived with them, where I was documenting every day of my life living with my parents, just in case I'd ever need to prove in court or whatever that they were terrible parents. I'd never posted it because I didn't want anything to do with them, and if I posted these videos of them being rude to me, making fun of me, and acting like I was the worst thing that could have happened to mankind, there would surely be repercussions for it. Back then, I just didn't want any drama, so I let it go. However, this Facebook post of theirs changed everything, and I finally posted those videos. Now, here's where I might have been the asshole. I used my public profile on Instagram, wrote long captions explaining my history with my parents, and then uploaded the videos to call them out. After that was done, I called my lawyer and filled her in on whatever was going on, but she was already a step ahead and had started the paperwork to file a defamation lawsuit against my parents for what they'd done. I was about to get in touch with my co-partners as well to ask them if they'd be fine with this lawsuit since their names had been dragged into the Facebook post as well. There were already a couple of comments on their post from a few of my relatives and some friends of my parents, saying that it's great that I'd finally been exposed and that they'd never work with us. So we definitely had grounds to sue. I also sent those screenshots to my attorney for future use and told my business partners about it as well, so they'd be in the loop. Once that was all done, I waited for them to call me begging for forgiveness, and they did call me from my aunt's number a few days later. But they called me demanding an apology and saying that I'd screwed up by posting those videos because, while they posted their rant about me on their personal accounts on Facebook, which meant only a few people would see it, I posted it on my public profile, and a lot more people were going to see that since I had a significant number of followers. They told me I needed to take that post down as soon as possible because people had already started messaging them with hateful stuff, and some were even threatening them. This could all effectively end both their careers since they didn't come off well in the videos I posted, and if their employer saw these posts, they'd be screwed. I got a little defensive there and told them they deserved this and then hung up. But I did archive those posts and turned off my phone for a while. When I finally got back to my phone after a couple of hours, my parents sent me an email stating that they were apologetic for everything that had happened in the past but also mentioned that what I'd done in retaliation was awful. Besides, I posted personal videos that featured them without their consent, and that was grounds for them to sue as well, apparently. I guess they'd been served with the defamation suit, so they told me I needed to take it back, or else they wouldn't hesitate to talk about how unethical I'd been, and that would certainly negatively impact my business. I've discussed this with my business partners, and they really don't think there's any reason for us to back down from the suit because they think we did things the right way, unlike those who lied and presented distorted facts just to make me look like a liar and take away my credibility. They have a point, but for some reason, I still feel guilty going through with it because they have apologized in the email, and I know that this suit is going to be bad for all of us in one way or another because of all the negativity attached to it. I don't understand what to do right now. Am I the asshole for suing my parents for defamation even though they apologized to me? Hey guys, so I've decided to go through with the lawsuit for a couple of reasons. It wasn't my decision alone anyway since my friends were also involved. Even though their post wasn't as widely viewed as mine when I uploaded it, I'm sure a couple of people still saw it, and it could have really affected my business. The intent was also to negatively publicize my personality and firm so they could get an ego high off of ruining my life's work. So I think defamation is fair game. Besides, their apology doesn't mean much when they apologized only when they realized their own careers were at stake. So they didn't really mean it, they just said they were sorry for the sake of it. I've been going easy on my parents for my entire life almost because I was afraid of them, even as an adult who's almost 30. I feel scared to even go up against them because that's just how I've been wired, I guess. The fear is so deep-rooted that I didn't even realize this was fear until you guys in the comments pointed out to me exactly how many times I'd had the opportunity to tell people the truth about my parents in the past, but I didn't do so on purpose or because I was scared of what might happen. The thing is, now I know nothing can happen to me, and I'm the one in power now, so they really can't touch me. I'm going to sue them regardless of their apology, which was pretty half-hearted to even begin with, and then we'll see what happens once we're through. The one thing I'm sure about is that I'm going to make sure they pay. I'm done being the good guy now, especially for people who don't deserve it. My parents were downright cruel to me, and no child deserves to grow up in a house like that. So now that I have the chance to get revenge on them in my own way, I definitely will do it. I've been the bigger person so far, but I don't see any reason to continue that any longer when they keep picking on me again and again just because they want a spot in the limelight. It's just disgusting, and I won't stand for it, not anymore. My aunt contacted me today to ask what I decided to do about the situation with my parents, and I told her that we were going through with the lawsuit. She was satisfied with the answer and then told me that she was proud of me. She also apologized for never doing enough when I was a kid, but honestly, I don't blame her. Back then, she was also just trying to make her way in the world and starting out in her career, so she couldn't really afford to take care of me. But when it counted, she stepped up and did the needful, and I'll forever be grateful for that. My grandparents and everyone else in my family were practically in love with my parents, so none of them would ever buy it if I told them how my parents were in reality and how they treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to CPS, there would have been a fair chance that I would have ended up in foster care or something worse. I'm not saying she's perfect, but I feel the need to come to her defense when there are so many people jumping at the opportunity to hate on the only person who had ever taken a stand for me and tried to be there for me in whatever capacity she could. I don't care if what she did was right or wrong, but whatever she did was good enough for me, that's it. I haven't spoken to my parents after the email, and they're probably still waiting for me to withdraw the suit. It's been 4 days, and we've decided we're going to go ahead with a court-appointed mediator for the negotiations first, and then, if the need arises, we'll let the case go to court. But for now, an out-of-court settlement is what we're trying to go for. My parents have money, and they have a lot of it, so it's not like I have anything to feel guilty about. They're the ones who screwed up, so of course, they have to pay for it. I don't know what's up with their jobs right now since there had been a lot of hue and cry from their end when I posted those videos of them, claiming that I was putting their jobs on the line by doing this. I can't believe the amount of gaslighting and drama that their phone call and emails were full of. I'm just lucky I didn't go soft and fall for any of it because that would have been pretty sad and pathetic. And to think that they even tried to equate the two incidents as if what I'd done was just as bad as what they'd done, if not more. They were spreading false rumors about me, and I was just retaliating by putting out their truth in front of the world. I honestly have half a mind to unarchive the videos once this mediation is done because they really deserve to be exposed. Their real faces should be known to everyone in the world. So the court finally authorized the mediator for our negotiations today, and we were notified. My parents called me. I'd unblocked them for the time being for this conversation, to ask when exactly I was going to withdraw the suit because things were going out of hand now. I told them that wasn't happening, and they completely blew a fuse. It was so chaotic on the call that I could barely understand what exactly they were trying to say to me, but I could make out that they were pissed off about it. There was a lot of incoherent screaming, so I hung up after a while. But then they called me right back, and it was my dad who told me that I was really pissing him off and that stunts like these weren't going to scare him. The air was thick with tension when I finally let loose, unleashing years of bottled-up resentment in a torrent of words that cut through the silence. I told them exactly what I thought of their actions, sparing no detail in my indictment of their behavior. It was harsh, unapologetic, and utterly necessary. The relief that washed over me afterward was palpable, like shedding a heavy coat I'd worn for far too long. I didn't give them a chance to counter. I hung up, severing the conversation before they could twist it back in their favor. But my parents, ever relentless, weren't content to let it end there. They reached out to my aunt, weaving a narrative that painted me as the villain, claiming I was suing them for reasons that were entirely fabricated. Their goal was clear: manipulate her into guilting me into dropping the case. But they miscalculated. My aunt, though kind-hearted, wasn't the pushover they expected. The "we're family" card, overused and worn out, held no sway. She'd deliver the response I'd prepared her for. She could offer them sympathy, but nothing more. If they persisted in harassing her, she warned, that sympathy would vanish, and she'd report them for their relentless badgering. Her resolve was a quiet triumph, a moment of pride amidst the chaos. Silence followed, but it was fleeting. By evening, my parents had escalated their campaign, contacting every family member they could reach. They fed them a scripted story, claiming I was pursuing legal action without cause. The result was a barrage of texts from relatives, each one parroting the same message. The lack of originality was almost comical. Most hadn't even bothered to rephrase the template text my parents had clearly provided. It was a transparent, poorly executed attempt to overwhelm me with collective pressure. But it only solidified my resolve. Their coordinated effort was a stark reminder of their desperation, a sign that they knew they were losing ground. It was almost pitiful, watching them scramble to salvage a situation they'd brought upon themselves. The legal proceedings have begun in earnest, and we're currently on a brief pause. I just finished lunch, a moment of calm in the storm, and now I'm typing this to keep everyone in the loop. My parents have always been formidable in their cruelty, but this time, they're on the defensive. The evidence is undeniable, and they're facing the reality that they'll need to accept our terms to avoid a courtroom showdown. In our last session, my father's glare was venomous, as if he could intimidate me into submission. My mother played her part, clinging to him in a melodramatic display of distress, like a character from a bygone film. But their performance fell flat. No one in the room was swayed. We all saw through their act. Through it all, my friends and business partners have been my rock. Their unwavering support has been a lifeline, a reminder that I'm not alone. Just now, over lunch, a close friend reached out, offering to listen if I needed to process the emotional weight of this ordeal. His kindness was a stark contrast to my parents' manipulations, a reminder of the love and loyalty that define true family. My aunt, too, has been a beacon of strength, her refusal to bend to my parents' tactics a testament to her love for me. Despite the pain of this conflict, I'm grateful for the people who've shown me what family can be, those who stand by you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care.